Hello and welcome to the Just in Time Cafe. I am Elizabeth Swan, co-founder of the Just in Time Cafe. I will be your moderator today. If you've never been to the cafe before, you're in for a treat. I am very excited about today's meeting or interactive session, creativity, gift, necessary skill, or superpower. And let me tell you a little bit about our guest today, Ruth, who's I think she's part of a team, so I'll tell you about her team too, but a former public servant with the Canadian government. Welcome, Ruth. Edwin Garrow is a master trainer and consultant from Costa Rica. So he is bringing us some Latin flair, which we are very much appreciating. Welcome. Tim is a business engineer and a troubleshooter from Ottawa. Welcome, Tim. And I believe Dwight will appear to us in a video today. He's another one of the authors. Dwight was operations manager, Aboriginal relations coordinator at Canada Post and Algonquin College, and he lives the Anishinaabe way. And we will have, and all of these folks have a background in lean methods. So that is a fabulous attribute there. So a few housekeeping notes before we begin. If you have questions, ask them anytime. You can enter them into chat, and if possible, we can pull you off mute or mute yourselves in the meantime. But it doesn't mean we have to stay on mute. Obviously, this is an interactive session, so we can talk and see each other, which is great. Let's see. We are recording this. We'll make it available on Just in Time Cafe website. There are some breakouts today. Those won't get recorded, but we will record the debriefs, and then we usually post them by the Monday of next week. The first activity was getting to know where you guys are from. We are officially international today with Edwin in Costa Rica and Kelly in Tokyo. So anyone else who wants to share with us where they are from, we've got Amy in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome, Amy. And we've got Sharon in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Great to have you. And anyone else that wants to share where they are calling in from? We've got a nice crowd here. Marcia in Ventura, another California gang. Michael Davis, also in Raleigh. Welcome, Michael. All right, so I'm just going to give you guys, Ruth, if you could go to the next slide, I will give them just a little info on our podcast, right? So the Just in Time Cafe podcast, the last one was on the Six Sigma Ranch Winery. So very cool couple that have this ranch and have used his father, what came from GE. So brought all of the Six Sigma methods into the winery. And that's really fascinating what they did with that. So if you are game, I will give you the link to that post and you guys can check that out at your leisure. And we have Marcia saying it's a great episode, wants to go there now. I agree. It sounds really fun. They have like hikes and camping, and they've really listened to the voice of the customer. So they are completely focused on what customers would like, which is have a little game of bocce with their wine. So I put that in there. Thank you, Marcia. And then there's also a webinar coming up next Thursday. I'll get that information out to you. Now that you have registered for this, you'll be on our mailing list. So I'll send out information on the next webinar, which is going to be the city of Port St. Lucie, Florida. And they've been doing a whole innovation rollout. They want to raise up the caliber of cities. And so they're bringing lean techniques to cities. Okay. And that is enough about us. Now I want to bring it back to this amazing team of Ruth and Edwin and Tim. Take it away, Ruth.
Thanks very much. We're excited to be here. So as you mentioned, we're going to talk today about creativity. Is it a gift, a skill, or a superpower? And we're going to start off with an interactive poll on creativity, and then talk a little bit about creativity as a skill. Now, for us, creativity is a skill that needs to be practiced. So we will have a practice breakout on getting into the zone. Then we'll talk again about creativity as a superpower. Another breakout, which would be the hero challenge, and maybe some time for questions and answers. So most people, if you ask them, are you creative? Well, I don't play the violin. I don't draw. No, I don't think so. So we'd like to do a poll to see where you think you're at in terms of creativity. So we have 3 questions, and yeah, here's the poll.
All right, so we're at 80, holding steady. So I'm gonna end the poll so we can see what we got.
Yeah, so the
And
first question is, I use all of my senses to tap into my creativity.
all
And
right,
it looks like we've got kind of a spread. There's only 12% that said they totally disagree. And I think the highest is 47% that somewhat agree. Okay, so we've got something to work with here. So the next question is, okay, I use different thinking modes to create.
we got a vast majority. Here we go. There's your results.
Yeah, it looks like people are equally divided among their answers. There's 24% for somewhat disagree, neither agree nor disagree, 24%, somewhat agree, 24%, and totally agree, 29%. Woo, woo. All right, so let's go to the next poll.
All right, here we go. And poll 3.
Creativity is a superpower that I can learn and use. And we have a winner with 80s, what? And now I can't read it. 56% totally agree. Lovely. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let's get going on the rest of our journey. So just to share with you the first poll question, I use all of my senses to tap into creativity. Did you know that we have over 21 senses? And each one of those senses is an opportunity for creativity or insights. We use different thinking modes. Each of these thinking modes can be used for creative purposes. There's convergent thinking, divergent thinking, adjacent thinking, lateral thinking, and also neurodivergent thinking. Edwin, did you want to say a few words about each of these types of thinking?
Hey, real quick. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm in Costa Rica. It's 25 degrees here. So, and it's never, when I live, it's never more than that. So, because I live up in the mountains, it's usually 20, 22 degrees. So, what was the question? about the thinking modes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So it is super important that we know in which part of the creative process we are. Are we solving a problem? Yes, but what problem? What is the problem? So we need to focus first. So we're going to need convergent thinking. That may mean focusing. That may means analytic thinking before we actually go into divergent or lateral thinking. So when that happens, then instead of closing the possibilities, so when we're focusing, we close to what is the problem, right? What's happening? What do we need to solve? What do we need to create? What are we designing? That's convergent thinking. But then we need to open to all sorts of possibilities, and that is when we go to divergent thinking. So we're going to open to new ways to see the problem, to new ways to understand what's happening, to new ways to solve the situation. And what else? Adjacent thinking. I love adjacent thinking because it's using everything we have at our disposal. Okay, so it's solving a problem, designing something. In fact, there's a phrase I love: every design is a redesign. So we use what we have available, that's adjacent thinking, to create something. A good example that's something that I don't like is the Tesla, because I hate the Tesla. I disagree completely with the management style and the whole thing. Okay, but that is not today's topic. Okay, so if you see, the Tesla is just a bunch of existing technologies put together.
Do you need to
And
wash?
the final result is technology with wheels. That's it. That's what it is. Okay, what else? Well, lateral thinking refers to specific tools that we can use to have literally lateral. So we most of the time we're here with the problem and the solution, but there's something here telling us, hey, I have a solution. There's something here triggering a potential idea, a potential solution. So it's learning to find these lateral triggers. And neurodivergent is something that is arising, is happening, because it's not only the normal people who have the answers. We now know that neurodivergent people have a totally different way to see a problem and to create a new solution. So it's basically kind of what all, and there are more thinking modes, but the most important thing here is that being creative is not about going crazy. There's a process, and the process requires us to focus on times totally, and focus on times, and going back to focus on times.
Thank you. So let's go on to the next. What we know is that creativity is a skill. And we understand that creativity is the ability to think differently. And the Future of Work report for 2023 actually listed creative thinking as the number 2 skill for the future, behind analytical thinking. What creative thinking allows us to do is basically to address our complicated and unpredictable world. It's how might we, or how else can we address things? Through this type of thinking, we can come up with new ideas, new products, we all know this, new services, but more importantly, new processes and new relationships. And this last one is something that we don't usually think about as a creative thing to do. So we've jumped the gun a little bit, and we've talked about the different types of thinking patterns. Now, with all of us being lean people, we're used to using the A3 problem-solving process, which I believe can be a very flat, two-dimensional process. How do we make it live and breathe by integrating different types of thinking modes into this process on purpose? Quite open to a very short discussion. can everybody see the, oops, can everyone see the A3 problem solving titles, or is everyone in
Yeah.
the middle here? There, that's better. So does anyone have some thoughts of how you could integrate these different thinking styles into these different areas of the A3 problem solving process to make it live and breathe? Just put your answers in the chat, or shout it out if you wish.
I think if I look at the A3 and your list, it feels like, you know, looking for best practices would crop up in the top right, for immediate countermeasures.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then the same with the bottom, neurodivergent, feels like accepting other ways of perceiving and thinking, that's kind of gets into the out of the box, like there might be elegant solutions that you hadn't considered, which you want to be aware of.
So I had a really good discussion with a person who works in healthcare, and they brought different sorts of data in that they wouldn't have normally considered. They brought in voice data and imagery to give a better storyline for what their patients might be going through. This was a moment for bringing in creativity in what else can we be looking at that may give us some ideas for a future action plan. Edwin, did you want to add any thoughts to?
Oh, real quick, I assume that we all here know the A3, and there's something special that happens in lean companies, and it's a requirement for ideas, and that is psychological safety. So it is impossible to think if we are not allowed to think in a company, right? So provided that we do have psychological safety, what happens next is that we assume in lean companies that everybody's creative. Because what is the obvious box for creativity in the A3? The countermeasures, right? How do we handle the countermeasures? We just do a brainstorming. That's it. And brainstorming is great, but it stays in conventional thinking. So our solutions or our countermeasures are going to come from what we already know. Okay, so the thing is that those countermeasures are not necessarily the only way to solve the problem. Or maybe the problem is so particular and so new that we need new ways to think about it. So excellent, because we have psychological safety, but we need more than just the space to solve problems or the space to suggest ideas. We need more than that. That's the thing. And besides that, if we take all the other boxes, even if all the other boxes might look like convergent thinking, they also have space for creativity. New ways to see the problem, new ways to analyze the data, new ways to think about the root causes. So there's room for creativity everywhere there. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And one of the things I'd like to add to that is sort of another way you might think about the neurodivergence is is how other industries or other companies or outside of your traditional territory have solved those problems. So again, this is a lot of sort of the cross-industry learning, and clearly if you have people or access to the ideas of how other companies have solved similar things or other industries, you can start to see how, for instance, I might apply the logic of what Walmart has learned in logistics, even though I'm not a Walmart company. I'm in the healthcare, to jump back into Ruth's initial industry. So, and that's not really, neurodivergence is more at the individual level, but I think there's almost a corollary to neurodivergence in the ability for us to learn from other industries if we are willing to, step outside of our own knowledge base and into, possibly the uncomfortable space of, hey, how would somebody else in a completely different industry solve this problem?
All right. Well, we're going to talk now about getting into the zone. And getting into the zone is about creating a space for not only problem solving, but opportunity finding. Now, we have our own ways of getting into the creative zone. It's the place where we can tap into our inner spirit. Sounds a little woo-woo, but it's not really. It's finding yourself and what works for you. Now, this is one of those names that I usually mess up. I'll do my best. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He's a guru in a guru in flow, and he likened being in the zone to a higher level. It's a sort of flow where people continue an activity just for the joy of it. It's where they feel at peace and excited at what's going to happen. So Dwight Powless was not able to join us today, but he has provided a clip about how he found his zone. Now I'm going to try this. Let's see. So we're about to go into a challenge called getting into the zone. The zone is a place that you make for yourself that allows you to be creative or to create. And Dwight, another one of our co-authors for your Creativity Sprint, has a story to tell us.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. As you know, my wife passed away recently, and discussions I had with her prior to her death was she wasn't really in favor of funerals, and neither was I, because funerals we found was so cloying and static. Everybody goes and then everybody walks away and forgets about you. And I didn't want that to happen, and it really preyed on my mind. So I thought the best way of moving forward was to create something for her. So I created a website about her and gave the opportunity to other people to add their thoughts so they wouldn't be forgotten, as well as the work and crafts that she had done in her lifetime. So it became more of it wasn't no longer a static activity, but a dynamic activity. And by doing that, not only did it relieve me, but I did get into a zone of creativity, of all the different things that she had done and how I could present them to someone else. And that brought me a lot of peace of mind, but it also brought me a lot of solace, so that I felt good. I felt good about what I was doing, and I felt that I was completely comfortable with what I had done and created. And other people who've looked at the website has also remarked on the same thing, on how they could see the relationship that her and I had. And whenever I hear that, it reinforces my belief that what I did was good, not only for me, but also for her and for others, her friends, our friends, and even strangers Because I've had strangers remark who've read it that they really felt something after going to that website.
So you were able to create an atmosphere not only for yourself, but for others, and possibly an innovation, a different way of going through the grieving process.
Right.
Well, thank you, Dwight. Let's see where our challenge goes to.
Thank you.
So, Tim, I've been neglecting you terribly. Did you want to introduce this challenge for everyone?
Thank you, Ruth. Yeah, no, you haven't been neglecting me at all, but I'm happy to present I'm happy to present the challenge. The interesting thing about the zone, getting into the zone or the flow, is one tends to lose track of time in it. It's one of those moments when you start in on something and then you look up and you realize, I've been at this for 45 minutes or 3 hours or what have you. And it's kind of one of those things where because you're so much in the moment, you're really you're in the flow as they call it. So think about that for yourself. Where is it in your own life when you get into that flow, when you get into that creative zone? And it might, for some people, it might be going on a long walk. For some people, it might be polishing their car. For some people, it might be anything at all, because it is a very individual thing, but it's where and think about it from that perspective as where is it that I get and I kind of lose track of all time, and describe it. So this challenge is really about identifying that and identifying where that happens, and then once you're in that zone, what are you able to do, or what are you able to think of, or what kind of ideas can you access that generally don't seem to be as accessible when you're not in that zone? And Ruth, how many minutes are we going to give people? We're going to the logistics. We're going to break them up into breakout rooms now.
Yeah. So we're thinking 3 or 4 people per group, and maybe about 5, 6 minutes, so that people can just not overthink it, and then be able to come back and talk about it. So.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Shall we ask just if there's any specific questions, if people understood sort of what the challenge is, and it really is to get into the breakout rooms and have that conversation about what your own zone is?
Yes.
Any questions or clarifications required from people before we jump into breakout rooms? Okay.
I have the rooms ready to go. So folks, you're going to get pulled into breakout rooms, so you can come off mute and video if you feel like it. And Edwin, Ruth, and Tim, I've got you in a group that you don't have to join. I just wanted you to, it was my way of managing it. So here we go, 5 minutes.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. So I hope people sort of enjoyed that and got a little bit out of it. What I'd like to do is just ask for some volunteers, for anybody who would like to unmute themselves and just give a 30-second description of kind of your own zone and what you thought about as you thought about you being in the zone and in the flow, where that is and what you think that sort of opens up for you. So just a quick 15-30 second summary, if you'd like to unmute yourself and or put your hand up to be called on.
This is Terry. I'll go first, if that's all right. One of the techniques we learned about was one of our people, we had Diana, Shannon, and Michelle in the room, was to have a whiteboard easily available so that as you're contemplating a problem and some potential solutions, you just write down what comes to mind, and being careful not to filter them, and be too, analytica about it, but not to get stuck in the details, but rather just let it flow And just having that whiteboard up there, easily accessible, provided the environment to create a creative zone.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Terry. That's great. Okay, who else would like to volunteer in the spirit of creative volunteering?
May I share a second one?
Please do.
I find this often happens not when I'm solo, but when I'm with other people. And I think it was Edwin who maybe spoke of brainstorming. I've participated in these sessions where a group of people are sitting around a table and you're brainstorming ideas on Post-it notes. And you're putting the Post-it notes as you write them into a pile on the middle of the table. And as you run out of ideas, you pull a Post-it note from the pile and look at it, and it might generate a new thought to you. Oh, I hadn't thought about that stream. And then it generates some new thoughts that you wouldn't have come up with on your own. And before you know it, you've got kind of this crowdsourcing going on to have a more creative pile being created.
That's very good. That's very good. And yeah, that really does open up a lot of alternate pathways. And that's a great technique. Thank you for sharing that. All right. A very not a talkative group today.
Well, how about we move along then?
Let's move on. Yeah, excellent.
All right. Well, we believe that creativity is a superpower, and creativity can be triggered by everything that makes you human. Be physical with your senses, emotional with all of your emotions. Did you know that we have, according to, I believe it's Robert Plutchik, that we have about 34,000 emotions. Now, just think about it. If you can pinpoint the exact emotion, you are more likely to be able to come up with a solution to deal with it. We talk about different mental areas for creativity in our thinking patterns. But there's also relationship creativity. Just think about it. Every time that you establish a new type of relationship, that can be quite creative. You're allowing yourself to think differently about how you can relate to one another. Cultural is often our foundation for our being, and to live that and share that can be a very powerful trigger for creativity. Spiritual also, not necessarily from a religious aspect. I think many of us have learned about Ikigai, which is your purpose. Did Tim or Edwin, did you want to talk about your why, or a little bit more about the Ikigai?
I just want to add something here, and the special word here, the key word is trigger. We all need to find what triggers our very own creativity spirit. Okay, so and I have a quick story here. I'm an engineer, so when I started with creativity, like about 15, 20 years ago, I felt very comfortable with creativity tools. I discovered that the same way we have the 7 basic quality tools, the 7 new management tools, and a gazillion other tools in Lean and Six Sigma, we have lots of creativity tools. Scamper, morphological analysis, ID art, Crane, lateral thinking, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so I was very comfortable with my tools, and I was teaching my tools to a group of advertisement people. advertisement professionals. And at the end of the training, they said, this is nice, but it's too technical. Yeah, because I was comfortable in my engineering skin. And then I discovered with Ruth and Tim and Dwight, I discovered so many other ways to trigger my creativity. So it could be just a walk in the afternoon. It could be just talking to a friend. It could be so many different things that are not technical. So there's no need to be technical here. So it's super important to find, it's personal, to find what triggers your personal brand of creativity.
So if we've got time, I think we've got enough time for one more challenge. Heroes can be a catalyst for creativity. Heroes enable us to expand our notions of what is possible. Think about the hero's journey. There's always a mentor. Step 4. Now, what we want you to do is think about what would your hero advise. Tim, can I call on you again to announce the challenge?
Sure. This is kind of riffing on the idea that we all, certainly as we were growing up, we had certain heroes, and they might be fictitious people, or they might be, heroes of in our families, or, parents, or what have you. But the idea is kind of putting out some sort of issue that you've got, and trying to almost simplify it back to the days when things were a little bit more, clear when you're a young kid, and your hero would sort of do something that was like, oh, this is what they would do. This is the, what would ... do, that sort of a notion. So, imagine that your hero is there in front of you and is talking to your younger self, and sort of saying, hey, at some point in life, you're gonna face this issue, and it really looks challenging and complicated, but it's really not. It's pretty straightforward. What would that message be that your hero would tell you? And how do you then sort of take that message forward and work with that to help address your specific issue? So this is really about activated with thinking about something right now that you are, call it struggling or reflecting on, and try to simplify it through the eyes of your hero that you saw as a younger self.
So
Okay.
if we can.
So I have the rooms ready to go, and we'll do 5 minutes. And
Yes.
here we go. I'll give you a warning shot just like before. I remember I was with a group years ago called Idea Champions, and they were based in Woodstock, New York. And we had a lot of different creativity techniques. And one of them was, we would, underneath the chairs of people, we would put, famous people like John Wayne or Marilyn Monroe, whatever. And then we'd say, we'd set up the how can we question, like what's our challenge? And then we would say, okay, under your chairs, reach out if you've got, John Wayne or you got Marilyn Monroe, who'd you get? And then what would they do? And people would like imitate the person, like, they would be John Wayne and just describing the ways they would solve the problem. And that was, I remember talking about that with Ruth, that was, it was basically hero. And she said, oh, we have a hero challenge. And so I said, oh, that'd be great, because it was a good memory. It was a good technique.
So I was talking with, her name is Demetra, and she was saying that some people really hate role playing, because in role playing, people start with themselves and they have to become someone else. And it becomes a little easier if you ask them the question, what would Superman do? Rather than trying to think themselves into another role. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and I've heard tennis coaches do that too. How would so-and-so play this point?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're Roger Federer going, oh, well, I would just hit it like this. And you've got a better top spin because you've gone through that thought process. So I think that's nice that you don't have to be the person, but what would they do? How would they do this?
Yes, it's an interesting book actually. Is written by a sports coach. Exactly that, and I think it's called Alter Ego, but it says that that's one of the things. So you would create your own alter ego, and it could be a fictitious, or it could be a real person. But the idea is that when I walk onto the court, I'm no longer the self-conscious so and so. I'm this somewhat arrogant, highly competent, highly, take no prisoners kind of person. And that's my persona on the tennis court. And that allows me to kind of get out of my own head and play at a different level than I really am. And it's really interesting. It's almost kind of like the, fake it till you make it kind of concept. But it's a mechanism to kind of help you get into another, hey, I'm a really friendly person, but in this role, I can't be a friendly person. I need to be, more assertive and more aggressive, and I need to tell people no. And so that's why I'm wearing my, that's why I'm wearing this different costume effectively.
Yeah. And it's somewhat easier to tap into, I think, because you have this fully formed image or impression of that other person or that other persona. So it's like, oh, well, I know what that person would do. It's accessible. So that's fascinating. All right, your gang is back.
Perfect. Oh, I guess we'll keep up with the questions. Tim, did you want to see what people have to say?
Well, same thing. We're certainly interested in anyone who would like to share both, sort of the hero, but also the issue and what that commentary would sound like.
The thing we talked about a couple of different things. So I don't know that we identified who our heroes are, but talked a little bit about some of the challenges that we're having. So the message that I'm making as part of my own experience is just do it and apologize later, because I'm trying to get some things moving. And maybe it's not the right solution, but it's a solution, and we will improve upon that. So it's, that kind of starts us in that consistent focus on improving things. And then we were also talking about the need for in being creative as a team, the need for psychological safety and knowing that it's okay to put forth your ideas, that people aren't going to criticize you for those things. So just creating the need to create psychological safety for teams to help them be creative.
Nice. Thank you very much, Molly. Anyone else?
I'll throw one out there. We didn't get much of a chance in our group to talk about the other ideas, but one thing sometimes I find that's been helpful is when I tend to go to the place where, that's not politically correct, or, that's not what everybody wants to hear, is to kind of throw the question back at myself and say, so what if you did say that? What if you decided to do that thing that you don't think is right? What if you took the alternative route? And just going with it and see what happens, and hope for the best and deal with the worst.
Nice, very nice. We were having a bit of a conversation about a sort of an alter ego. Also, is that at some point there's you can step outside of your own self and say, this is if I'm delivering it through this persona that is not me but is very capable in these kinds of areas. So that's kind of an extension on the hero theme. But thanks very much. That's excellent stuff. I think we're probably getting close to wrap up, Ruth. So
yeah, we are. Well, this is just to show you that our book, Your Creativity Sprint, was a true group sport. And one of the things that Edwin said to me, and I remember it so clearly, is each one of us could not have written that book. It needed all four of us with our four very different perspectives. And so we're actually quite proud of the result. It's a book that goes into the different factors of creativity, and some of our challenges came from this book, and there are quite a few more that you can do. I guess at this point, before we wrap up, does anyone have any questions?
Great shot. I love that. You're all in your different venues and
Yeah.
different temperatures.
I like, just as one thought, I really like to refer to this book, and I've taken to referring to it. This is not a book for reading. This is a book for doing. There's certainly a little bit of content to read, but really it is all about the exercises. It's all about putting yourself, out there in a safe manner, and trying different things and seeing what sticks. And as as Edwin says, what triggers, and for all of us, the triggers are going to be different. We, in the book, we provide 35 opportunities to figure out your triggers.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much, you guys, for coming on. This has been fun. I love it when we veer a little off and do something a little unexpected and have breakout sessions. That was great. Worked out. And thank you all for participating. That was lovely. You guys are great. And I know some of you might have missed the beginning. DM pointed that out. And we will post all of the recording on the website. Should be up by Monday. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you again for coming, Edwin, Tim, and Ruth. So lovely to have you, and be well, stay warm or temperate as you desire. And everybody else, till next month.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, everybody.